everyone, it's Miss Sims here. Today is part 2 of our wave art project that we started last week, and we get to work on a lot of different watercolor techniques. If you don't have watercolors at home, that's okay. I still want you to go along and watch this video with me, and a lot of these things you can still do with markers if you have them. I'm really excited, and I hope you are too. Let's go ahead and do it. We have 2 goals for today, just like always. The first goal is something we've already been working on, but we're going to really keep practicing keeping our warm and cool colors separate. By now you should know that the warm colors are red, orange, and yellow, and the cool colors are blue, purple, and green. We're also going to practice different watercolor techniques, and your goal is to try at least 3 different ones from the video today. Today in class you will need your watercolors, a water cup, and paintbrush. You'll also need the paper you created last week, and it's optional to have paper towel and salt. Your paper from last week should look something like this. It'll have all the black crayon outlines as well as the details in different colors that we worked on when we did our foreground, what's in front, and our background, what's in the back. We also did lots of different line techniques last week. If you haven't done this yet, go back to week 1 of this project so that you can make sure you start from the right place. I have my watercolors and my paper out, and I'm going to go ahead and start waking up those watercolors. That was something we talked about a while ago. Getting your paintbrush nice and wet so it's smooth and the bristles aren't hard anymore. And then slowly rubbing some of the different paint colors, and that way you can make sure that you wake those up nicely without ruining the bristles on your paintbrush. We're going to use all of our warm colors first, with the exception of our hills that are going to be green, and that's why I started with this yellow color here on my sun. Now the first watercolor technique is also coming up right now, which is a relief. Relief means that water and oil don't mix with each other, and crayons have naturally oil inside of them. You don't have to do anything to make this relief. Basically, this means you can color straight over the top of your palm tree with your watercolor and nothing is going to stick to it. That is the relief. That's why we did all of our outlines in crayon. It'll help us keep our watercolors separate in different areas. Now we can go ahead and move on to another section of our watercolor, which is waking the green watercolor up and getting those hills painted. Now I know green is a cool color, but I said this was our one exception. This is still a relief, so you'll notice all of those light green details we did aren't getting covered up by my dark green paint, and the more I paint over, the more you'll notice them, and it's the same with our palm tree. Now I'm going to start speeding this video up so you don't have to wait as long to watch me paint, but make sure when you are doing this you're taking your time, pausing the video when you need to, and restarting when you are ready for the next step. Now that we're done with the green, we're going to go back to using all warm colors for our background. Remember, background is what we worked on for space last time, and that's the part, everything behind the wave, the thing that is not right in front of your eyes. And we're going to create a little sunset here, and sunsets usually have lots of colors. They have pinks and orange and reds. So I'm going to give you a technique on how to mix these colors together without ruining your paint palette. The first thing you're going to do is line the outside of the area where you want your red. So I'm doing red. You can do whatever color you'd like, but make the outline of your outside color first, the one that's right next to the wave. Then you can add another color to the inside. So between your sun and that last color you made, I'm doing an orange because that's another sunset color, but it's up to you. And now we're going to try a new technique, which is called blotting. Blotting is where you take water from your watercolor and you basically tap really lightly. And that tapping helps us mix those 2 colors together so it looks really natural. It also helps us overlap colors without ruining our paint palette. Once you finish the sky, go ahead and click play again, and then we are going to start working on the calm water that's behind the waves still in the background. We're still going to use warm colors, the orange, red, and yellow, because we're doing a reflection of the sunset. And I'm going to break this into section. This is another technique that helps blend colors nicely, and it's called sectioning. So we can make different sections and then very lightly overlap them with our water on our paper to help it look like the colors naturally blend together. It's kind of how you see water look when you see a reflection, and that's what we're trying to do here. Now you'll notice that I'm making organic shapes or kind of random shapes because that helps it look more natural than making perfect lines in our paper. You'll want to do that when you try sectioning so it doesn't look like there's a perfectly straight line because that's not quite as natural when we make our reflections. Go ahead and pause here until you're ready. The first section of my wave in the foreground in the front is going to be just blue. We're moving on to our cool colors now, and this is not really that special of a technique. It's something that all quality producers do as good artists. And what we're doing is we're just not making our brush lines, the direction that our brush is going, be random. I'm following the same curve that my wave is going. So when my wave's going straight, I'm following that. If it's curved at the top like it is right now, I'm following that too. This is just a technique that helps everything look nice and neat when we paint with watercolors. We can do some overlapping with color as well on our next wave if you want to have kind of a mixture of colors. Sometimes water is almost a blue-green mix. So the first thing you're going to do is put one color down at the bottom, but it doesn't even need to be filled all the way in. You can leave some white spaces because then we'll clean off our brush really well and we'll add that green color over the top and fill in all of those white spaces, and it becomes a little mixture without us ruining our paint palette. Again, this is a super good technique if you want a mixture of colors without having to ruin your paint palette, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to be very careful with our paints so that they last for a long time. This next technique is going to use your paper towel. So if you have a paper towel that was an optional supply, go ahead and get that out now, and you might even want to fold it or crumple it up a little because it'll make a really cool texture. What we're going to do first is we're going to get our paint section really wet. We need to use quite a bit of water for this and fill up the whole section. We don't want to leave any white spaces. Then we're going to take our paper towel that's kind of folded up and we're going to dab it while it's still wet, and it'll give it a really cool texture. I'm going to do that around this whole wave. It's going to get sped up, but you'll get to see what it looks like at the end. You can even crumple your paper towels in different ways to create different textures with this. Another thing we can do is just simply called motion, and it's very simple. We just make our paintbrush move in a motion that we like. So if I want to use squiggles, I'm going to make sure that every time I do my painting that I'm creating it with squiggles instead of with straight lines. When it dries, you'll be able to see some of those squiggle textures. And the last option I have for you requires our salt. So if you have salt, this is another option. First thing you're going to do is get the sections of your wave that are left super wet with paint, so there's lots of water that was used in them. Once you have your salt, you can go ahead and start sprinkling it over any of the spots that are still extra wet. This will give it a very speckly texture, as you can see here on mine. The salt will not stick if it's dry though, so make sure you do it while your paint is still wet. Remember that you don't have to try every technique if you don't want to. Your goal is just to try 3 different ones, and I gave you a lot, so you'll have a lot of options. If you do the salt after your paper is completely dry, you can go ahead and rub it off, and it'll make these little speckled textures in the paint like that, which look really fun for the water. I hope you had fun, and I can't wait to see what you created. I'll see you next week. Bye!